Hi there! In this video, I'm going to talk about my favorite book series, the top 20 in my opinion. Granted, I haven't read loads and loads of book series, but the ones that I really enjoyed, that's what I'm going to talk about today. I didn't put these in a certain order. I'll probably put some of my very favorites at the top, and maybe some of the ones I don't love as much will be near the bottom. And one that was very good, not the most amazing, but I did like it, was Matched. This was just an interesting concept. This was when all those dystopian books were starting to come out. Those little YA romance type of things were just becoming huge hits. And this one I really thought was neat because it was kind of like a mix of 1984 and Equilibrium put together, but with a romance. This is about a girl who is going to a banquet, and it's a matching banquet where they match her up with who will be the best mate for her. So she gets a match and she really likes that match, but then someone that she knows comes part of an extra match that she could choose, and she's a little confused, and she's like, oh. So then she starts thinking about her options. This is a society that's a little bit controlled, and I love how it helps you understand the importance of making decisions on your own without people trying to guide you and tell you what you should or shouldn't do. This has 3 books, and the first one was my favorite, the Wizard of Oz books. In the Oz series, there are 14 books. There's even a partial book that I have not read the half book that I'm going to have to read. But all the 14 books that are in the normal series, I have read, and from all of them, I am a harsh critic, and from all of them, I got either 4 or 3 stars. There was only one that I gave 2 stars on. What I love about this series is that from what you know about the Wizard of Oz, most people only know a portion, just one little tiny bit of the story. There's a whole world around Oz. Some of my favorite characters, or at least some of my favorite books in this would be, of course, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. I loved Ozma of Oz, The Patchwork Girl, Rinky Tink in Oz, and Glinda of Oz. I love the art in this, and I love the stories. They're very fun. I read all of these to my sons when they were really little. Well, my first 2 sons, not my one that's a toddler now. And they had a really good time. I would not suggest reading these to really, really tiny kids. I think like around 8 to 10 is probably best because there are some a little bit gruesome things in these. So while everyone's talking about the Wicked series, Wicked does not even follow like anything from the Oz series, and it drives me nuts. So if you want to read Wicked, please read the original Wizard of Oz series, please. I beg of you. I want to talk about the Reader trilogy. This is a series I don't hear a lot of people talking about, and they really should. It is so very fascinating. Kind of reminds me of one of my favorite books ever, The Neverending Story, just because there's all this adventure in this book. It's a great fantasy series. This is about Cephia. She has a kidnapped aunt, and she wants to go find her. There's a lot of sailing the seas. There's a lot of fun in this. She learns about herself in the process of trying to find her aunt. And she has a gift. She can read, and a lot of people cannot read in the life in the time where this story takes place. So it's very special. And she goes on this adventure also because her father had been killed and she wants answers. I loved the first and the third book. The second book was like my 3-star read, but the other 2 were so amazing. The Courage to Dream series, I had talked recently at least about the last book because I read it this year. And I don't know why it took me so long to read the 3rd book, but the first 2 books I had the most love towards. The 3rd one, not as much as the others. But this is a really great story about an Irish immigrant family to the New York City, Long Island type of area. But they've got money, which is kind of rare for a lot of the Irish immigrants. So each of these stories is a love story. And it's a Christian series. This is set, it starts out in 1911. Each story is just very sweet with the way that the people come together and the romance that is shared. The story of the family, even though sometimes they don't always agree with each other, they learn to communicate with one another over time. The Limberlost series. This is just 2 books. It's Freckles and Girl of the Limberlost. I really love this series. I talked about this in my spring books. Just the 2 of these books are just so beautiful. There's so much nature in this. It gives you a love for the surroundings and being able to make friends with people and make bonds, and the idea of forgiveness. There's love in this. These are beautiful stories set in the woods. To All the Boys I've Loved Before. When I read this series, there were no Netflix movies about this yet. I really thought it was so cute. It's a very, high school romance about a young girl who her parents had fallen in love and she wanted to have that same kind of story. Her mother had been Korean and she is gone now. And her father is a white man. And so she's talking about what it's like for her to fall in love with these guys. She writes letters to them. It's one of those stories where she decides to try to have a fake relationship. They're not really into each other, but hey, let's pretend for the masses. was. They had their reasons, and I thought it was very sweet, and I swooned. I love letter writing, and it was just really good. And I will say that the first movie is one of my favorite movies of all time, and I never thought I would put like a newer movie as one of my favorites, but oh, it's so good. Although there is some talk about typical high school stuff, but overall it's very clean. In Refiner's Fire, this is a series of 3 books. It gives you perspective of the Civil War period and what people might have gone through. Different people, one that was in the South and what that looks like for her, where she's torn between learning about the things and the treatment of slaves, and she writes down about her own life as she writes her own thoughts that could get her in trouble in Virginia. She hates slavery unlike the people around her. And this is a Christian series and it is gorgeous. I just really love the writing style and it was just so amazing. The second book is about a sister left behind while her brothers fight in the war and what it feels like for her. And there are lots of lies that get her in trouble. So it shows how you should think about how God views you rather than man. And in the last one, it's the perspective of someone who had been in slavery. And I really love that one so much. It's beautiful. Before the Coffee Gets Cold series, I actually haven't finished this series yet. I have one more book to read. I don't know if they're making another one even. Every time I read one of these books, I shed tears. I think the last one I had read, I didn't, and I was in shock. Different people go into this cafe and they can go back in time or even forward in time, and they can see people that had been in that cafe that maybe they had went and talked to at some point there. And they have to be able to have their interactions before the coffee gets cold. Otherwise, they could get stuck there as like a ghost. But it's very fascinating. There's so much about being able to communicate with people that maybe are no longer there, or maybe they're dying, or maybe they're lost, or whatever the case is. And it is gorgeous. I love these books so much. This is definitely one of my favorite series. And I know I didn't finish it yet, but I know it's one of my favorite series. The Shady Hollow series, I've talked about this several times. I'm about to get the next book that is just about to come out. There are several of these books plus novellas. I've read every single one and I love them to pieces, about these creatures that, you know, they have personification where they could talk, they could walk, they act like people. There's a reporter, Vera Vixen, that she solves these mysteries around the town of maybe people that are murdered or creatures murdered, and just the sense of the community and how people come together, or how she's able to clue different things to find a result. It's just a cozy atmosphere while you read these too. In the woods, you know? Abram's Daughters. This is a 5-book series. I love these stories. They are so crazy. Like, these are Amish, so they're Christian. These are about daughters. Their parents have these ideas for them and how they should live their lives, and they have to learn on their own. Once I started reading these, I just had to keep going. I just, like, one after the other. This is one of the few series that I had to read all of them in a row. I don't always get that way. Sometimes I split them up. I will say from these 5 books, my favorites were The Covenant, which is the first book, and The Prodigal, which is the 4th book. One of Us is Lying is a series that has 3 books. This had even become my oldest son. He had to read this for a summer reading book in 11th grade. So that was kind of weird because I already read the series. And so then he was telling me about his thoughts on it. And he was like, I think I know who the killer is. This is a teen story. This is kind of like a Breakfast Club thing. There were 5 students brought into detention. One of them dies and the others are getting blamed for it. And there are lots of secrets. Everyone has a secret. So those start to come out. And that is why one of them is lying about their secrets. I did figure out after the first chapter my theory, which had come true. But hey, my son got it wrong. So I guess like some people can't guess it, or it just takes time. He did guess it as he went along. He's like, I think it's this person. I just kept my mouth closed. And something that I had said in my review for this was, it shouldn't have been a fun book, but for me, it really was. The Hunger Games. I know everyone is reading this right now because there's a new book that came out this year. I've read all of the books. When the first book came out, that was the only book that was out at the time. None of the other books were out yet. So I started this when it started, before the movies came out. So to build up over time, every time a new book came out, I got to enjoy that with fresh eyes. I really enjoyed this story. I don't even have to really talk too much about it. It's a bit of a battle royale where there are different districts and people are chosen that are really young to have to fight to the death. And there are 2 victors that are chosen from this, and they're like celebrated. Woohoo, yay, yay, you got to survive a whole lot of craziness in a field or wherever it might be, because sometimes it might not be a field. But there are stories of with each character. There are bonds made. There are people that you start to get connections to, and you know, I can't do this because you know people are not going to survive. There's also a love story in this. This is a clean story. There might be language, I don't remember. This is a very good series. I didn't think I would like it because I'm like, great, death. I don't like death. The Emma M. Lion series, which I am still reading. I know I didn't finish this yet. I can't help but rave about it. It's just so amazing. I love the way it's written, and the character of Emma, she is hilarious. Just her humor is so fun, and I can't wait to see what the love story is like. But yes, I have read only 4 of like the 8 or 9 books that exist for this series. I'll get there, but I know this is going to be one of my top favorites. And she's just writing in her journal, her diary, and she's talking about each day and the difficulties she might have with her cousin that she has been living with, even though it's going to be her house that they're staying in, and just the people she interacts with, the lost love she has had, idea of a possible new love, and the friendships that she has. Amish Vines and Orchards. I so loved this series. It's an Amish love story, but the love that happens in this is just like, whoa, I don't know. And then you have to kind of choose. It's one of those, like, this is my issue. I do like those books where you have to try to figure out which person she might choose, and you like, I like both of these guys, or something like that. This was one series that like I couldn't put down again. And I feel like a lot of Amish books get ignored and people don't want to take the time, but they have great book series for Amish love stories. Seriously, read some. Read the ones that I have suggested here. If you must start with one, start with this. So this is about this woman named Rhoda. She loves making preserves, and she has an herb garden, and she understands how things with nature connect, that some people are kind of calling her a witch. She's just a good Amish girl. There are these other guys, you know, they have an orchard. There's a troubled sister. There are people that come together and clash and they don't get along. There are these drama things that happen one after the other. It is great though. There are 4 books in this series. The first one was definitely the most amazing though. Okay, now we're getting up there. So I know you people, maybe you have bad taste in your mouth about the Twilight series. I absolutely did not want to read this series. It is such a funny story looking back now. I went over my one friend's house and she made us watch the first Twilight movie, which was the only movie out at the time. And she's like, here, watch this movie. I was like, oh, it's horrible. I didn't like it. I was like, this is filmed terribly. Like, I don't like this story. But then she's like, well, you have to read the books. So I said, okay, I'll read the books. I read the first book, and then my husband read the books with me, and we both loved the books. We were so surprised that we did, because we're like, okay, this story about high school love story with a vampire and a girl that's like the weird girl. You get sucked into the characters and you get into their heads, and you know, these vampires have these special abilities where, you know, each one has some sort of ability, and the main one, he can like read the thoughts of these people, but he can't read this one girl's thoughts. So what is she thinking? She's interesting because I don't know what she's thinking. She's like seeing him and she's kind of like, oh, who's this guy? I loved that while I was reading these books, the second movie came out, and I love the second movie. It's the only movie I really like from the series. It's the soundtrack. Everything is just beautiful about it. But yes, the books, way better than the movies. So good. There are some strange things that go on. Like while reading this, I would say to my husband, that is a little awkward and strange. I don't really understand. But then I was like, okay, well, I sort of get it. I don't know. A lot of you guys know what this series is about. So I'll just leave it at that. But my husband and I still want to go to visit Forks in Washington because of this series. It is just, the atmosphere is so crazy throughout this series. I love it, you know, and I didn't think I would. I thought I would hate it. And I don't. The Lunar Chronicles. Wow, these are retellings of different favorite fairy tale stories. And the first one, it's very sci-fi fantasy. So you have Cinder, and Cinder, she is Cinderella, but she's like a cyborg, like part cyborg. She's not full cyborg, and she's like a mechanic, and she's like amazing, and her character is so brilliant. But my favorite of the books is probably Cress, and maybe it's because I always loved really long hair, and it's about Rapunzel. But regardless, like they tie all of these books together. They all like are different characters that have to come together, and the perspectives, it's just crazy when you when you read these. Another one that I read with my husband. We read a lot of series together. So if you haven't read the Lunar Chronicles, definitely recommend. There are 4 that I have left to talk about, and these are probably my top favorites. Little House on the Prairie. I adore the Little House on the Prairie series. I read some of these when I was a little girl, not many. And then again, as an adult, I read them all. There are some things that are a little questionable in it when you think about the time period that you're like, I don't like this about this story. The rest of it, the telling of growing up in the 1800s in a prairie or in the big woods or wherever, long winter, wherever it might be, in upstate New York, wherever it might be. I want to visit all the different places from these books. They teach a lot of things, just fun stories that kids would have gone through during that time, and it gives you some insight. It's very impactful when you can learn some history. This is based off of a real person and her family. And I've read offshoots of these books, not like people creating their own versions, but I have read Laura Ingalls Wilder's daughter, Rose. I've read books that she has written about these, and some people have said that they think Rose wrote all of these books, but with the guidance of her mother, and then she just put it as her mother being the writer, which kind of, in a way, makes sense if you read some of Rose's stuff. But regardless, it's still her story, her mother's story. And I just absolutely love these. I love learning about how that family might have survived or interacted. And just some of the stuff in here are very real and very sad even. You know, this is the book that made me want to live more simply, I believe. It was something that kind of transformed my mindset about how I should live my life as a minimalist. Let's go into The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I will say what drives me nuts about these, people read these in chronological order. I read this in publication order. It's the only way I will read this series, and I've read it twice. I read this to my sons. I read this on my own. My favorites from this series would be The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. The Silver Chair. Wow. That's the 4th book. My least favorite was The Horse and His Boy. I gave that 2 stars. I'm so sorry. But also The Last Battle, I gave 2 stars. But the rest I gave really glowing. I mean, I have 2 5-star reads in this series, so that's something. But yeah, so these are stories where you're in a magical land called Narnia. You live over on this side of the world, but in the 1940s. So when you transfer over into Narnia, there are so many creatures. There are witches, there are goblins, there are talking animals. There are just so many fascinating creatures in this. There are dryads, there are nymphs, there are dragons, there are marshwiggles. I mean, I just love this. And another one that I grew up with, the Wonderworks BBC version of this show where they went up through the silver chair. So I grew up watching those constantly over and over again, that I actually had a hard time accepting. And I don't really like the newer movies that had come out because it's just, there's something magical about those old ones. I don't know. Even the cartoon I loved as a kid. But these books are just very special, and I really love the messages throughout each of them. So it's really good. Great for kids. And the Harry Potter series, this is one, I gotta give you a story. Back in the day, I worked at a bookstore. It was a job I had when I was between the ages of 18 and 19. And one of the books came out, I don't remember which one. So when it came out in the bookstore, it was just craziness. And I was like, whoa, these books have a huge impact. And I think only like 1 or 2 of the movies had come out. I don't really remember. I didn't watch the movies. I grew up in that society where Christians were like, you shouldn't read this. It's got magic in it. But then I'm like, but what about Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe that you guys rave about, and Lord of the Rings? They're like, those are by Christian authors. I'm like, they're still in there. Like, I just listed that there are crazy things. But my point is, when I was pregnant with my second child back in 2008, I decided I'm going to read these books. And another one that my husband started reading with me. I love these. These are some of the most addicting books. You read and you just keep wanting to know more. The characters are so lovable. There are so many characters, but like the way you learn about them, it's just amazing. I love the stories. I think that you have to discern for yourself. I'm very cautious about that. This book series, I absolutely love. My sons loved it as well. And the last one, which probably isn't my very top favorite, I read all of the Anne of Green Gables series, as well as the Chronicles of Avonlea, which have the same characters in it. And a lot of people don't know about that, but there are other books that have Anne in it. Anne of Green Gables, I grew up again on the 80s version with Megan Follows. I love, love, love that version. She played her perfectly. And she's an orphan girl that gets picked up by this brother and sister duo They need help with their farm. They think they're going to get a boy. This girl has crazy imagination. She has not been treated well her whole life. She has dealt with having to help out with large families, and she feels alone. She just wants to find a bosom friend. She wants to find some kindred spirits. She wants to be able to have those connections. And she's so honest with her feelings, and she is very honest in general, that sometimes it gets her in trouble. And she's stubborn. But I absolutely love the way this book is written. The first book is the best book. It is beautiful. The rest of them, some of them sound very gossipy as you read them. I'd say all of these books I gave 3 stars, other than the first book that was 5 stars and the last book that I gave 4 stars. And if you go on Goodreads and if you try to see the series, they will show some extra books, like The Road to Yesterday, which I also read. I have not read The Blythes Are Quoted though, and so I should probably read that one. Let me just double check my list, make sure I handwrite my lists out, guys. Those are all of them. They're all amazing book series that you should read, all 20 of them. If you have not read them, let me know. If you have a series that you love, that you want me to read, I might have read it and I might not have. I haven't read the Lord of the Rings series, for instance. I'm sorry. I'll get there one day. Let me know your favorite series, maybe your top 3 series. Let me know in the comments your top 3 series, so that way maybe I can read them too. Thank you so much, and I hope you continue to read out there and have fun. Bye.